Hello, this is my discussion on the parenting article. Um, I actually really liked it. To be honest, that was a lot of the things brought up in it were actually ways that I was raised when I was younger. Um, like specifically the unsupervised, I guess you'd call it, ways to play outside. I grew up, well, besides growing up with my parents, I also had both sets of grandparents, and they both had larger properties, an acre, 2 acres, and they had one of them had like a where I live now has like a wooded area in the back, and we used to literally climb trees. We'd play, army men, my brother and I. Um, we could just dig holes if we wanted to. We learned from a really young age to work to earn money. Obviously our grandparents didn't. It wasn't about giving us money. It was more about learning that if you wanted to get something, you needed to work for it, and you got paid to do work, and that was just the way that we were raised. Mowing the lawns, helping them build things, do plumbing, sometimes electrical. I learned a lot of general various handy skills when I was pretty young. Um, Working on cars a lot too at my other grandparents. Just doing a lot of stuff that I feel like a lot of kids nowadays don't, especially in this country. A lot of my experience in working was always in restaurants, and you see a lot of families come in with kids, and they don't even like try to parent them. It seems like they just let them sit there with an iPad, and they won't eat without the iPad, and you just can tell that that's all they do all day is sit on the iPad. And I understand that not everyone has the access to the land or trees, or that I did, but I mean there's definitely compromises that can be done. I also like the part about I forget which country it was. I think it was Finland that has the school schedule with more recesses. I know I've struggled with well, I didn't know until recently, but ADHD really bad, and I had a really hard time in school when I was younger, especially because it was a really slow pace, and having those breaks would have been crucial. We still had recesses back then. I don't know how they do it now, but we had at least a couple in a lunch, and those were good breaks. But I like how they have it where they space it out every hour or so. It's almost teaches you to be like in high school where you're going from class to class, but instead of having 5 minutes to get everything into your bag and shove it all in there and then run to the other class, you're having time to go outside and get some fresh air and relax. Especially like obviously these are little kids, but if you had like a like a larger test or something, and you were just finished that, kind of fries your brain a little. Excuse me. And especially if you're going from a math quiz to English, you kind of need a little bit of a reset, and bounce some ideas off your friends, and just kind of get in the mood for a different class, and definitely helps you expend some energy too, so you can sit there stiller and not be so squirmy like I was. Um, Also playing like in I think it was Japan. No, it was Norway. That talks about kids, going near dangerous things. Obviously, you don't want them sticking their fingers in plugs, and going into things that could really injure them, or near water. I do think there should always be supervision near water. You can't risk that. My brother almost drowned when he was a kid because he just like walked into the pool and his head went right under the water, and fortunately my mom was out there, and so she grabbed him, but it was just it does not it takes but 20 seconds to lose your kids in water. Um, but other than that, I mean, like especially with the knives, learning how to use knives at an early age so they're not afraid of them, so they can learn to make decisions on their own. I really liked a lot of these points that they were brought up. I I would raise my kids basically the same way I was raised. I've always wanted to have kids, um, and I would really hope that they would get access to what I had access to, and because I really feel like it built me into who I am today. And obviously no parents do it perfect. There was things that could have been improved on, but I know they put a lot of effort in, and they really sacrificed themselves um, to give us the care and attention we needed. I think one thing I looked into it more too. It was the thing I kind of looked up. Said in Vietnam and China, they use a type of skill called elimination elimination communication, which is like calls it a gentle, non-coercive approach to infant pottying. Involves basically it's like, you know, they always joke about that face your kid will make 3 seconds for it, you know, goes to the bathroom and then laughs about it. But like it talks about how they basically give subtle cues and signs, and they might squirm or they might go still or they might make a specific kind of noise or whimper a certain way, and then that kind of signals that they might need to use the restroom. And it talks about how in those areas they're actually able to almost have their kids potty trained like as infants, which I didn't know was a thing. I mean, obviously back before toilets were a thing, I'm sure kids learned quicker. Um, but with toilets being a part of everyday life in most areas now, um, not having to spend so much on diapers, I'm sure would be really helpful because everything's so expensive and diapers are no exception. And especially with being that they're just waste. I mean, there's nothing I as a consumer can do about it, but reducing plastic use or whatever goes into diapers, I'm sure is not real biodegradable. So it'd be nice to cut down on that, and going into the landfills, and especially that's just waste. That's not. There's nothing you could do with those other than let them sit there and do their thing. So it'd be really nice to be able to have your kids already used to it. It talks about certain ways to hold them and basically, train them with either the little kiddie toilets or having a special seat so that they can sit on it themselves and kind of learn to gain that independence on their own. Um, yeah, this I really actually like this article. I didn't realize that, that was such a other I don't want to say otherworldly, other country, extra country thing, where parents do basically what I what I was raised doing, but we still had games and video games and all that kind of stuff. I read a lot. My mom I was reading when I was like 4, 5. I mean, my mom really instilled that in me. My brother didn't take as much to it, but I mean, I know the offers were there. Obviously, every child is different. People aren't always going to like the same things as everyone else, and they're going to find enjoyment in other things. And but yeah, I really enjoyed that when I was younger. I would say that some of the negatives that I did have about my childhood was I don't know. I mean, I really look back fondly on my childhood. I guess there was some areas of communication that weren't the greatest. Um, my dad sometimes would get upset or, just wouldn't know how to convey ideas effectively. I also struggled with night terrors. I still do. And I liked that where they said that in Japan they kind of sleep in the same room a lot longer than, here in America. And I know I had to do that a lot when I was younger because like I said, I really struggled with horrible dreams. I mean, I basically, every night was just fearful because I just, I'd have such terrible dreams, and I mean, having that, I would have to sleep in their room a lot. So having built that comfort level earlier or longer maybe would have helped. Who knows? I mean, I still have the dreams to this day, so it probably wouldn't have made a difference. But I do like that it builds that sense of family community and makes them seem like they're a cohesive unit instead of individuals. I did also like the part about how when they become adolescents and teenagers, and it talks about how they not like you can still give them your independence, but not making them feel like they immediately have to jump ship, because a lot of times I feel like that leads to that teenage angst of, oh, I know more than you. I'm on my own now. I can do things on myself, instead of feeling like they need to, not that they owe their family anything, but just having that sense of I called it obligation, sense of obligation to your family to do better in school, or to have a reason to want to study harder, or you know, you don't necessarily have to get a job at 12, but trying to contribute to your home or pay your own car insurance or something. Maybe I feel like that should be something a lot of kids do. It helps them learn learn how to pay bills earlier, save money, budget a little bit. Just kind of gives them an all around better feel for what it would actually be like to be on their own versus just feeling like they are on their own and know better. So yeah, I really enjoyed this article. Actually, I'm probably going to save it, especially the part about the potty training, because that's always one thing that I don't look forward to if I ever have children is trying to get them to be independent in that manner. Because I know my brother and I struggled with that actually too, and so it could have been the dreams or whatever, but it would be something I hope my kids don't have to go through as well.